Hi guys, it's Mrs. Gunter, in case you can't recognize me with my quarantine hair. But it is me. I just want to say hi and let you know that I'm so proud of you guys for this year and the hard work that you've done. But I did want to send out a quick video to show you how to set up your poster boards for drawing your world map this coming week for your blue books. So I'm going to turn this around. Y'all know I'm so bad at turning cameras around. I think that's it. All right. So I've got my poster board here. So you all got your poster boards. And our poster board measures, sorry, I'm on the carpet, it's 22 by 28. So we know that our very first step that we need to take, step 1, is to draw your equator and your prime meridian lines. And so basically we're going to half our poster board going up and half our poster board for the prime meridian going over. So half of 22 is 11. So take your ruler, and this isn't really the best ruler. It's kind of sparkly and hard to see, but I recommend you using a yardstick if you have one, since the poster boards are big. But anyway, we're going to go up to 11, and you're going to mark your line, and then you'll draw your line across for your equator, and then you'll come over here 14 inches, which I already marked, but 14 inches, and then you're going to draw your line down, and that's going to be your prime meridian. So I'm going to pause this real quick and get those lines on there, and then we'll continue. Okay, so you can see now I have my equator line drawn across, and then coming down I have my prime meridian line. So now we're ready to put our tropics on. So we're going to go to step 2, which is to draw our tropic lines. So remember, from at this point, that when we drew this was kind of in inches, but from here on we're going to be measuring in centimeters, and we're going to measure in centimeters from the equator to the top of the poster board. And then we're going to take that measurement, so whatever that number ends up being, and we're going to multiply it by 23, and then we're going to divide that number by 90, and then that is going to be our is going to be our Tropic of Cancer, and then we're going to do the exact same thing down. We're going to use that same distance, and that's going to be our Tropic of Capricorn. So if we take this and we measure in centimeters, so make sure that you are in centimeters from this point. That's measuring, you can't really see on my awful blue ruler. Don't use blue rulers. That's measuring right at like 27.9 or 27. Hold on, let me go back and look at that. 27.5. Okay, sorry. Okay. 27.5 is what that measured. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the 27.5 times 23 and measure it whatever yours is. I'm pretty sure this is 11, but my measurement is 27.5. But remember, we're just measuring in centimeters from our equator to the top. And that's going to give us, you're going to have something similar to this number. So I got 27.5 centimeters. We're going to multiply that by 23, which is the 6.32.5. And we're going to divide that by 90. And then that's going to give me 7 centimeters. So I think it was like 7.0, da, 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 da. So we're just going to keep that at 7 centimeters. So that means in centimeters, I'm going to measure from the equator line up 7 centimeters. Okay, so you see that, the 7 at my weird blue 7. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing down. I'm going to measure 7 centimeters. See my line? And that becomes my tropics. So my Tropic of Cancer and my Tropic of Capricorn. So once again, we measure from the equator up to the top. That's going to give us this number, this measurement, right here, measurement. And then we're going to multiply that number by this number by 23. We're going to take that answer and divide it by 90, and that's going to give us the measurement from our equator to our tropics, and you're going to do that on the top and on the bottom of the equator. So I'm going to pause this and do that real quick. Okay, so here we go. So now we have our Tropic of Cancer. And on the below the equator, we have our Tropic of Capricorn. I'm just abbreviating here. Okay, so then to get our circle, our Arctic Circle up here, and our Antarctic circle down here. We do the same thing, except... All right, so you're going to draw your Arctic lines at step 3. You're going to take your previous measurement, which was 27.5, so that doesn't change from our equator up and our equator down is this number. Okay, and then we're going to take that same formula, so that measurement, but this time we're going to multiply it by 66 instead of the 23. So we're going to multiply that number by 66, and then we're still going to divide it by 90. So when we do that, when we take our 27.5 and we multiply it by 66, it gives us this big old number here. We divide that by 90, and that gives us 20.2 centimeters. So that means from the equator, I'm going to measure up. Where did my pencil go? Okay, up 20.2 centimeters. And then I'm going to measure, same thing, down from my equator, 20 point, it's really hard to see on this blue ruler. Okay, 20.2 centimeters for the most part. And then same thing, I'm going to go across and draw my Arctic circle line, and I'm going to go down to my bottom and draw my Antarctic circle. Okay, so here we are. We have on the bottom our, sorry, I've got dog hair everywhere, our Antarctic circle. And then up here at the top, we have our Arctic circle. Okay, so now you guys, once you have your globe markings on your poster board, you are ready to draw the world like that. Okay, we've drawn the world. The magic of video. Okay, so you can see here, I've got my world. Here's my Western Hemisphere. And then over here, I've got my Eastern Hemisphere, Africa and Europe, Asia, and then down here I've got, now you can see I ran out of room for Oceania and all the islands, so maybe you'll not be like Miss Gunter and leave room for your islands, but if not, you can always just add a little square if you needed to of poster board. Now, I wanted to point out to you guys a few things to help you remember and to help you guide you when you're drawing the world. And I did send this in your document that I dropped off your Blue Book. There is this document that tells you just some things to look for to remember when you're drawing, just as guidelines to say, oh, hey, this is where things should fall. So, for instance, you can see here our, up here at the Arctic Circle, the little foot of our llama, Baffin Island, he kind of sits, you can see that the Arctic Circle runs just through the kind of top part of his foot and through the bottom, little just bottom point of Greenland. So hopefully that'll help you kind of orientate where these pieces go on your map. And then you can see here that Iceland sits directly under this little Arctic Circle, and I'll put you there. So you can see that Iceland sits right under the Arctic Circle and close to the prime meridian, not on it, but close to it. All right, and then we can see here also that you notice that the very top parts of Alaska and Canada, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, also just the top pieces of that, the Arctic Circle runs through. So that's just some things to think about when you're placing your stuff on the map. Then if we look down here, you can also notice that I think it's the Bay of, not the Bay of California, it's something of California here. I can't remember the name of it. But this sits right above the Tropic of Cancer. And then Hawaii sits also right under the Tropic of Cancer. So this is a good point that when you're getting ready to start drawing Central America, that this bay or this something of California, I'll have to go back and look at it, sits right above it, the Tropic of Cancer. And also Florida also sits right above it. So those are really good points just to remember when you're trying to place everything, that Florida sits right above it. And then the Caribbean sits right under our Tropic of Cancer. So once again, just really good guidelines to help us orientate where things go on our map. And then that means that Central America, this part right here of Central America, sits right in between the two. Okay. And then when we're getting ready to draw South America, we know that the equator runs through Ecuador. And then, of course, that means it runs through the top of Brazil. And then you'll notice that our French Guiana, Suriname, Guyana all sit right above it. And then this little kind of portion of Brazil sits under the equator. And then the Tropic of Capricorn is going to run through Chile, a little bit of Paraguay, and Uruguay sits under it. And then it keeps on going through. And then that's pretty much our Western Hemisphere. So just some things to show you, kind of to remember where things sit with our Western Hemisphere. And then, of course, our Antarctica sits down here. Most of it sits kind of under the Antarctic Circle. We have a little piece that sits above it. And then most of it kind of just sits right under or right on the Arctic Circle. All right, so let's look at some places to note when we're looking at our Eastern Hemisphere. Okay, so looking at the Tropic of Cancer, you notice that it hits right at Western Sahara. So that's just a good point to remember that that's going to run through Western Sahara. So when you're ready to kind of get Africa on the map, that's a good starting place when you're getting ready to draw it, is know that that runs through Western Sahara. And then this kind of sea part of Africa is in between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer. And we know that Equatorial Guinea sits above it, and then Sao Tome and Principe kind of sit right on it and above it. And that it hits at Gabon. So the equator is also going to hit right at Gabon in Africa. Okay, and then we have our tropic that kind of runs through Egypt and Libya and Algeria, through the top of Saudi Arabia, and through just this tiny little portion of United Arab Emirates and Oman. Then it's going to hit through India, Bangladesh, a tiny portion of Bangladesh, Burma, sits right above Laos and Vietnam. And then it hits this little island. I think this is Taiwan. That's part of China. And it's going to go right through Taiwan as well. So, even though I don't think that's something that we have to label on the map, but it's just a good reference point for where things sit. Okay? And then at our Arctic Circle up here above, you'll notice that the very top parts of Norway and Sweden and Finland, the very top kind of slope, the top part of the slope sits above the Arctic Circle. So that's just a good reference point too when you're looking at that, as to where when you're starting to draw this part of the world. And then let's look at this part right here. Okay, so and then you notice the Tropic of Capricorn, that it also is hitting at Namibia. So you see that it's running through the bottom half of Namibia, just a little portion of South Africa, and that Swaziland and Lesotho and the rest of South Africa sit underneath it. And then this tiny little section of Madagascar it runs through just a little tiny portion of it, but that are Mauritius, Comoros, and Seychelles. Did I say that right? Probably not. Are in between these two. And then, of course, we know that, oh, Lord, all that dog hair. I'm sorry about that. We know that here, that it runs through the Tropic of Capricorn, runs through Australia. So we see that it runs through there. And then we know, of course, that our New Zealand sits under here. I didn't get those islands in there, but I think we talked about in class kind of where everything sits. I did get the Solomon Islands right here, but I know the equator runs through Kiribati, and then above that sits Guam and the Federated, the Mariana and the Marshall Islands and all those things. So don't be like Miss Gunter and get your islands in there. Okay, so I hope that helps. Oh, let's talk about the prime meridian real quick, just some other points. Once again, I did make you a document that kind of just points out some of these features that you can go back and check on. Let's talk about the prime meridian real quick. So you can see the prime meridian runs through just a little piece of the United Kingdom. And it hits a little piece of France as well. Sorry, I'm trying to get this out. And then it runs down here through Algeria, a little bit of Mali, Burkina Faso, it hits Ghana. And then you can see that Togo and Benin sit on the other side of that. So that's just a good little thing when you're drawing this portion to remember that Togo and Benin sit on the other side of the prime meridian. And that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot that it runs through. It just runs through a couple of European countries, United Kingdom, France, tiny little bit of Spain too, just like the little portion of it. A little bit of Algeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Ghana. And then it hits here through Antarctica. And that's kind of it. So I hope that helps you guys. I can't wait to see your maps. I know they're going to be beautiful. I know that you've all worked hard. And I know everyone's going to do great. I'm praying for peace and confidence. And I love each of you. And take a picture and show me your map when you're done.